Shop the Sherwin-Williams Memorial Day sale and get 30% off paints and stains May 16th through the 26th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you. We're here, it's December 3rd. We're getting close to the end of the season, for me anyways, and in just a couple of weeks, I'll be taking an extended break, and then we'll fire things back up. Not until February, though. We won't be starting back up with the show until February, so I've got a couple more shows after tonight, I believe 2 more, and then we'll take a break for Christmas, and then normally I close off for the month of January. Gives me some time to get some schedules coordinated and things like that, and get next year's lineup up and running. So, but I will keep you posted as we go through the next couple of shows. But again, I want to thank everybody for joining. We're going to start things off here in just a moment with another great discussion here on the Coach's Corner panel, and I'll introduce tonight's panelists in just a moment. And a little bit later on, I'm going to be speaking with a gentleman from across the pond, as they say, Iain Lowe. He's the owner of Iain Lowe Photography, a golf course photography company, and he's author of his new book and publisher of a great book titled Scotland, Home of Golf. He and his son, Chris, of course, have partnered together, and he's actually done several books. We'll talk about that in a little bit more, but he's going to be joining me a little bit later on the broadcast after Coach's Corner, and he's going to be calling in quite late for him. It's still early for us from the UK, so we'll look forward to hearing from him a little bit later in the show. Let me remind everybody, of course, that the show Golf Talk Live is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing top quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, offering insightful reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top PGA and LPGA teacher professionals, all designed to help improve your game from tee to green. So subscribe today at golftipsmag.com. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to start things off with Coach's Corner, and tonight's panelists, I will now introduce them. First up is Jamie Leno-Zimron. She is an instructor, body worker, and consultant. She's also an Aikido 6th degree black belt, as well as a Class A LPGA teacher professional. She's a corporate and conference speaker, executive trainer and coach, and speaker for Vistage International and TEC Canada, which is the executive committee. Also rounding out the panel tonight is Bill Abrams. He's the owner-director of instruction of the Golf Solutions Academy at Balmoral Woods in Crete, Illinois. And in the winter months, you'll find him down at Park Ridge Golf Club in Lake Worth, Florida, where he is now. Bill's been a PGA member since 1993 and is experienced as a high-energy and multi-award winning players coach and advisor. His results-based holistic approach to coaching produces consistency and desired results, coaching the entire player while appreciating their personality and situation. He says, I quote, "I teach people, not systems. I listen intently to your needs and goals to develop a game plan for success." And he, of course, was mentored and a disciple of the legendary instructor Jimmy Ballard. So, Jamie and Bill, welcome to your last show this season to the Coach's Corner panel. Thanks.
So happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, Ted.
Really appreciate it all the time, Ted, all the work you do.
Always a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it. And as always, I thank you guys for your time. I know it's not always easy having to dash home from the golf course and what have you. So I appreciate you guys always giving of your time. All right, I'm going to go in the order that I introduced you tonight, just to keep things simple. And what I'd like for each of you, and again, be mindful that we want to try to keep our answers as certainly as informative, but as brief as possible, so that we're not taking up too much time. But because I got lots of questions to try and get in. But Jamie, I'm going to start with you, and what I'd like for you to do, and again, given the fact that this was, I'm going to preface this a little bit. We know that this was a very difficult year for many people. So, but golf managed to sort of rise above, much out there. A lot of people went out to the golf course in most areas. Some new players and so forth. But as you look back through the season, what was the biggest improvement that you've seen among your students this year? What was some of the biggest improvements, and what areas of the game did you most see sort of a trend in their improvements?
That's a great question. Always good at the end of the year to look back, right, and kind of take stock and assess and all. So thank you. Well, I have been doing more virtual trainings, despite the fact that, we actually have more people out at golf courses, which is really interesting. The golf, the industry's been trying to grow the game for how many decades, and now it's growing,
right?
Because golf's a game that is safe to play, right? We're outdoors, we've got some built-in social distance, which is great. So that's been wonderful. But for myself, it just turns out for varying reasons that I've been doing more virtual, and I really, as they say, pivoted to virtual speaking, virtual teaching. And so one of the things that I see that's been really quite exciting, honestly, is that I've done a lot of golf mastery schools, and which I often say could be self-mastery schools. We're having an opportunity, because we're not always out there hitting the ball, to actually go inside a little bit more, to pay attention more to what we're doing. So, and online, I have, of course, my fitness program, Make Your Golf Club Your Health Club. We're able to do that. I go out in my backyard. Other people do. I have shown them various ways they can practice. We work on swing patterning. We work on the mind-body connection. We work on knowing where our body parts are, our fitness, the mental game, the sort of mind-body game, and how we manage our mental, emotional, and physical energy out on the golf course in all kinds of different situations. But it's kind of like, I practice martial arts, Aikido, and we're also not able to be in the dojo and be so physical now, so lots of virtual training. And what's been so interesting and actually beneficial that would not have happened without coronavirus this year is that in martial arts, we don't have the person there to throw, and it always takes us out of ourselves because we get busy doing the throw and doing the technique and throwing the person, and that person's not there. So, we have to kind of pay much more attention, a lot of self-training, self-mastery training. And in a sense, that's true with golf. We don't have the golf ball there to hit all the time. And which no matter what our best intentions, we get sucked into hitting that ball and how was the shot instead of, what am I doing, and how do I work with my own energy systems and my own mind-body system, and what about my emotions? Who ever heard of them, and, or how to manage them. So I think that I would say that I've been seeing an increased interest in these areas in my students, and also an increased amount of practice that's kind of, in a sense, a bit away from the golf course, and ways to just even practice at home, which I've been an advocate of for years and years. From the martial arts, we know we need to train and train often, but how often does the average person have time and money to get to the driving range, much less the golf course? So we need to be doing stuff at home on a regular basis, and it's very doable. So those are the things where I feel, I've been able to make an impact and see people be more interested and be practicing those things more, and more than interested, fascinated. And they're like, wow, and then when they actually do get out there, and I can get out there with them, it makes so much difference. So that's been a benefit, actually, of this period of time.
Very good. And I couldn't agree more. I think, we have to take that time to practice the various different movements and things that we need. And sometimes you don't need to go to the golf course. You can do it right from home. So I agree with that. Great response. Thank you. Bill, what about yourself? What's been sort of trending this year? I know you've gotten out to the golf course. You're down, as I mentioned, in Florida right now at your other location. We're a little bit warmer climate. And you've had a chance to, obviously, when you were up north, work with your students there, and then obviously work with some new students or rekindle new relationships down here in Florida. What's been some of the trends this year that you've seen, some of the areas of biggest improvement that you've noticed?
A lot of what I'm seeing is a lot of general improvement from adult players where, my junior programming has always been extremely strong. But I found later in the season in Chicago, I brought on a lot of new customers and new players into my programs because a lot of them hadn't played in years, were just dusting off the clubs, played more this year, and were really unhappy with what they were doing. And, getting back to the idea, I wouldn't say just one area of the game, but I think just general improvement from players was key because, there's limited recreational opportunities that are available to most people, whether it's gyms, health clubs, even something as simple as going to the movies. We've had to find a way for people to, enjoy themselves outside, and golf is the simplest way and the best way to do it. And nobody, there's very few people who want to play and play poorly. So I think we've kind of got a renewed interest in players and their interest to play better and more competently. And I would say above the board, I've seen as much or more improvement, and we've always seen good improvement with the adult players, but I think this year they were more gung-ho to get after it. And I think that's something improvement-wise, not necessarily physical skill, but the overall improvement to play better, which means they're going to play more.
Yeah, and that's that raises a very interesting point, and I just want to make a sort of a quick comment, then we'll move on. But that's a really a great analogy because in typical years when we didn't have this to deal with, we had so many other distractions in our lives, so time became an issue. Even for some of the older retired players, they had other activities, maybe grandchildren, things like that they were doing. So, their golf games were cut back a little bit. But this year, because of course, the pandemic, not only were more people, new people and others coming out to the golf course, but a lot of older golfers or more seasoned golfers had sort of renewed some of those efforts because they now had more time on their hands, so they were able to spend more time practicing and working on some of the areas that maybe typically they haven't had as much time in more recent years. So I would agree with that. I think overall, maybe not one specific area, but I think overall, I think golfers are improving because they've had the ability to get out there and work on things because, quite frankly, we didn't have a whole heck of a lot else to do. So let's get out in the golf course and work on some of those things. So great points on both ends from both of you.
Ted,
all right.
Yep,
go ahead.
Can I add just one more quick thing, which is just to get a little bit more specific. I think that people have been able to work on their short games and their putting more because you can do putting at home. You can do putting and make putting games and contests, even with your kids, your family, whatever, your partner, or right on your carpet or in your home. And also, backyard. Some people have a backyard, may live in a building, but there's grassy fields at schools. Schools haven't been so much in use. I've certainly seen that around here. Golfers pitching it around or at a park. So right. I think that there's been more opportunity to work on short game, and I've certainly tried to work with people, and virtually we can do that kind of training even online and watch people. So I would say, to get more specific, that short game, which is so important and that people don't practice enough, there's been more opportunity and more ways to incorporate that into even just kind of your daily life at home.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's where you're right on. I think a lot of people have had that opportunity to be able to do that, and because they can do, in most cases, not every case, but some of it right at home, that's where we want them to focus on, is that short game, because that's what scores in golf. So great point. All right, Jamie, I'm going to come back to you real quick on the next question here, and I think we would all agree that certain areas of teaching when it comes to the grip and the stance and posture and what we often refer to as the fundamentals are key to building a solid foundation. I mean, you've got to, it's like building a house. You got to build a solid foundation, and those are key areas. Some of the best players in the world, like Nicholas and others, would tell you that if you start with those good building blocks and build that solid foundation, you're well on your way. But what else is important for students to understand if they want to become a better player? They're building that good foundation, but there's some other areas as well that might be maybe just as important, or certainly important enough that they need to take notice as well, besides some of the typical fundamentals. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, as I kind of talked about just a little earlier, the idea of training is really important. I actually think that we have this idea of lessons, right? And you come for a lesson and then fix me. But I think that for me anyways, it's a different mindset, and coming maybe from the martial arts, but it's not only martial arts. I mean, it could be how you learn to play the piano well, or, anything that to do well really requires practice. And, you're really engaging in something where, to improve it takes just continual doing, and that's because actually it's part of neuroscience. I mean, our brains, when we repeat in action, they grow these little dendrites, come out of the cells in our brains, and then those dendrites start finding each other, and when they connect, and enough of them connect, and those connections get stronger, that's what we talk about, a neuromuscular pathway. So, why does create a new habit take 30 days or whatever? We've got to do the thing in order to neurologically, neuromuscularly. So practice. I think people need to understand practice. You can't just come to a lesson once in a while or even every week and then not practice, right, or think that that's going to fix you. And the idea isn't just to fix things. So I think it's a shift in mindset where people want to improve. Every golfer wants to improve, but that means engaging at kind of all levels, not just the technique or the club isn't going to do it in and of itself. It's really about how you are, how you're present in your body, and where your body parts are, and your mind and your body can, work together, and that takes some practice. And practice can be, again, it can be the driving range, it can be on a golf course, it can also be at home, it can be in your living room or outside nearby or in your backyard. So I think it's a shift in mindset. And Houdini, I love this quote from Houdini, who said that magic is practice. So it's not like he just all of a sudden did like these cool magic tricks, right? And you ask any magician, right, they're practicing their tricks. They got to get good at them. And so it takes practice to do anything well and for it to become automatic. Golfers love to talk about muscle memory, but two things on that. I always question that in the sense of, first of all, what are you remembering? And it's like that's where you really need some good lessons, good instruction, and good practice drills, and also that you're grooving in and remembering the right stuff. And then the other is, how are you going to get muscle memory if you don't practice, if you don't repeat the good stuff? That's how you start to get good. And, I mean, we all marvel at the tour pros, but look at how much they practice and look at how much they play. I know when I play, if I have an opportunity as a teaching pro, I don't have that much opportunity. We've got a tournament here and there, every few months or whatever, now and then during the year. But when I've had an opportunity to play some more tournaments more regularly, I start to know what I'm doing. I'm in the groove and I'm getting to know myself and know what's happening, and I do better.
Right.
So we just kind of need to do it more. And the cool thing is, golf is fun. People are golf nuts. They love it. And if they knew that they could really engage even at home and not just wait to get to the golf to the driving range, to golf course, I think that they would improve more. And also, again, just looking at golf improvement not as occasionally do a lesson to fix me, but how can I really engage so that this becomes a real part of me on all levels of my being?
Right. I agree. Great point. Jamie, you're exactly right. Practice makes perfect, and we've got to get out there and work on the various components of the game, not just the fundamentals, but the other areas as well. And the only way you can do that is to either get out on the golf course, get out at the driving range, or even work from your home and work on some of those areas. But I got to move on.
Okay.
Right. I've got to move on to Bill. Bill, I want to ask you something a little bit differently here, because I think Jamie pretty much covered most of probably, I'm sure, what you would have agreed with as well. what area of the game typically do you think, Bill, that most students have the most difficulty grasping?
That's a great question, Ted. And I think the biggest problem, whether it's a competitive player, whether it's a junior, whether it's a club player, a recreational player, is, as Jamie was saying, some of the mental mastery, overreacting to situations. One of the things that I find with players is most players, after they become a bit competent, when they hit a poor shot, they can recover and not hit a second poor one in a row. However, one of the biggest keys that I see is how you overreact to great shots as you get better. Meaning if you hit a drive that's perfect down the middle, how do you react to that? Do you flub the next one, or do you hit a poor shot, or you step up on a par 3 and knock one in a foot? How do you react on that next tee? And I think that's something that that players have a big trouble in their time to try to cope with, because you're always talking about having a quiet mind. Well, I really, of the essence, there's no such thing as a quiet mind. There's an organized mind. We can't control our thoughts, but we can control how we react to them. And I find that all the time. A player leaves a ball short, then the next one they smoke it long. Then they become fearful of one side of the hole or other, and that really becomes a huge issue with them. And then that leads to yips and other little flips and dunks on the short game. And I think that's really the hardest part of doing it. And as coaches, not instructors as much as coaches, we have to get that as Jamie said, that mind-body balance where players are organizing prior to the shot and that not overreacting when something happens.
Yeah, and that's that is so true, because we really see it on in every aspect of the game, but particularly you see that on the putting surface a lot. You'll see a player will, hit leave it short, and the next hole he said, well, I got to get it to the hole, and the next thing he blows it, 10 feet past, and now he's got a sketchy putt coming back. So we see that in all aspects of the game, but I noticed that a lot, particularly in some of the people that I've played with over the years on the putting surface, and even some of the students that I've worked with. That's a big area. All right, I'm going to come back, and this one is for both of you. And again, we've got to be conscious of the time, so I want to give each of you, a few moments, obviously, because it's a difficult question, but I want to be conscious of the time because I've got a few more questions I need to get in. I want to try to get in tonight. So, Jamie, I'm going to start with you. So, typically we might work with a student. We might have them for 30 minutes in a lesson. Sometimes we might have an hour, depending on what it is. But every once in a while, we get somebody that doesn't have a lot of time, and we want to try to help them. So here's the question. If you had just 10 minutes with a student, if somebody come up and said, I've only got a few minutes, can you help me with my game? What would you say, or what advice to them would you give to get the most out of that time?
I love the question. In the LPGA at tournaments, at the tour events, we have something called the lesson zone. And in the lesson zone, we have a bunch of pros, and people sign up for their shift, and we have 10 minutes to give a lesson to people. So I couldn't give you a blanket answer, what would I do with someone in 10 minutes, but what we do, and I think we've gotten pretty good at it, is to see the student, ask them what they'd like to work on. So we're student-centered, and then have them take a few swings or hit a couple balls, watch them, and just from observation, hone in on what is one thing they want to work on. Maybe they need to hit it straighter, or maybe they might want to hit it farther, whatever. But let's just say straighter. And what is it that's causing it? Is it a lack of balance? Is it something in their grip? Is it something in the way they use their hands and then affect the club head through the ball that's knocking it off course? So, whatever it is, but just to look for that one thing that could help them, and to work on that for the next, 5-6 minutes, whatever time we have is after we've done that. So that's kind of how those lessons go, and it's really been fun. It's a great challenge, and it's remarkable to watch all these different pros in all their different ways with all these different students with a particular reason they're coming for their lesson, to give them something they can really use. And I've just seen students walk away so happy from these 10-minute lessons. It's quite remarkable.
That's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that. Bill, what really Jamie's talking about is, not so much offering a quick fix or an instant improvement, but giving them some direction, and then giving them the opportunity to really think about it and work on some of those areas. So posing the same question to you, if you had just 10 minutes, a student or a potential student walked up to you, what would you say to that student, or how would you advise them to not only help their game, but to make the most out of that time that you have with them?
Real simple, ask them a lot of questions and listen intently. What is the ping that knocks them back? When you talk to them about what's a shot, if I can give you one shot or correct one shot right now in 10 minutes, what would that be to make you happier and make you play more golf? I think that's a big area that you have to go. But also, I think a lot of the things that get missing are the setup and balance, and a lot of the issues occur because the foundation of the house, the footwork, isn't good. So what happens, then there's an overreaction or underreaction up the food chain, and your arms and hands and torso don't react correctly because your weight may be too much on the toes, on the heels, you may be a little too far left or right. And I think that's probably the first place you have to go, is get them to check on their balance a little bit, depending on the situation, and then see from there how the balance in the swing is, because a lot of times the static balance is poor, and then the dynamic balance gets even worse. So what we have to do there is make a quick correction where they can see a huge difference in ball flight right off the bat. And everybody talks about the tempo, but if you don't have good balance and good dynamic balance, your tempo is going to be all over the ball chart.
Yeah, and that's also, thank you, Bill, that's also a great point, because, quite often we have students saying, well, this is happening or that's happening, but they don't always clearly identify what's causing it, whether it's poor balance or whether it's, a faulty grip or what have you. There's a myriad of things that potentially could be. So, that to me is another way, as Jamie pointed out, and as you are, really identifying what some of the key problems are, and then helping them once they've identified it to sort of overcome it, because you're not going to help. One of the biggest mistakes that I think that, as an instructor, that we have to guard against is offering these sort of quick fixes. And I know most don't, but you get some out there that do, and they say, well, yeah, I'm slicing the ball, or I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and they're looking for a Band-Aid to help their game. So, you have limited time, and sometimes you want to help them out, and you do things like that. But I think more importantly, if we can identify what the root causes are, why they're having, struggles in certain areas, I think, as you pointed out, Bill, and Jamie has pointed out as well, is now it becomes easier once you can identify what's causing the problem, then to offer solutions and options to correct it. So moving forward, when that happens again, they're going to say, okay, I remember now, this is what's causing this, and now they're able to self-diagnose. And that doesn't mean we want them to, get out there and do everything themselves, but it helps them to understand what the root cause of the problem is. So great answers, guys. I really like that. All right, so Jamie, I'm coming back to you. We've got another question, and this one is now going to turn our eyes back on you as the instructor. And I want you to think about, and again, if you need to, can't think of anything particular this season, you can always refer to last season if necessary. But what did you take away from working with your students this year that will help you become a better teacher, coach, instructor as we move forward into 2021? What did you learn from your students working with them that you think is going to help you become even a better instructor or teacher?
Wonderful question.
I occasionally come up with them. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm always encouraged when by my students, and just so impressed to see just how enthusiastic they are, let's say, to find what can really help me, and to understand golf more, how much they love the game, and also how much they love to compete And what I mean by that is that could be competitions, and that can be at any level. I've got a student who, she's a friend and a student actually, but she's in the Midwest, and she's, I don't know, flight C, or I don't know what flight she's in, but certainly not the championship flight in senior women's amateurs. And she just really loves golf, worked on her game, and in her flight, she did so well that she's qualified to go to an event in March at Pinehurst. And she is like thrilled beyond. She's out of her toes with excitement. And, it's not like she's going to be the top senior amateur, U.S. Women's Amateur champion. Who cares? She's in her flight, in her thing, and she has these opportunities, and she's having so much fun. How much fun people have, especially if they can improve and play better and hold their own well. Just how much fun they have engaging at any level in a competition, and that could be a friendly, fun one with their friends. It could be there's so many organized events and at clubs and public facilities, and it could be creating just a fun putting contest with their kid at home. I mean, whatever it is, I just always learn how important it is to kind of test yourself, to have kind of a measurement, have something to work towards, and the sense of fun. And that so a lot of people are having fun, and they're engaged, and they're loving it, and they're feeling like, they're doing okay. Maybe they're doing a little better. They win sometimes. It's just great. And so it's that spirit, and it just reminds me, I guess I keep learning from my students what the game's all about. And it's not just about this improvement to get a low handicap or be a pro or something like that. That's just not what it's all about.
Well, and that's a great answer. I like that because, I think sometimes, often we lump golf in as a sport, because of the professional levels, but it's really a game. And the whole premise of playing games is to have fun. And Bill, I know that as Jamie has explained in her situation, I'm sure you've got some, something that you can or have taken away from your students this year. So as you reflect back on 2020 with everything that's gone on and the students that you've worked with and that, what did you take away? In other words, what did you learn from your students this year that is going to help you moving forward into next year?
I think the big blessing for most of the students is, number one, their resiliency. Because I had a lot of high school players that either had a season or didn't have a season or had a protracted season. Some didn't have a high school state championship. The resiliency of the players was one of the things, but their ability to adapt and improvise and not take anything for granted. I think that was the biggest piece of the puzzle that makes me proud as a coach. Because situations were not perfect. They were not expected. We were managing situations and not allowing them to manage us. And, with the way that the season rolled, it was much like an airplane already took flight, but you're still building the tail section of it while it's in the middle of the air. It was their ability, the players' ability to adapt and overcome and really have fun in a challenging environment. I think that's, that was the biggest thing that I took away from all my students is it was beautiful, it was fun, and, it was, enjoying a game at whatever level you were at.
A great answer as well. I think when I look at for myself, I think for me, it's sort of a combination of what both of you said, but I think also too, when you see that they get it, that they're starting to understand what it is that you're saying. Because, we can all agree golf can be extremely difficult for everybody. Even the best players have challenges, throughout their career. And, one of the things is it can be difficult sometimes with students to get them to help them to understand, to grasp, as I mentioned earlier, number one, what it is they're doing wrong, how to fix it, how to correct it, and how to get right back on the right path, if you will, and then also to put a game plan together that's going to be beneficial to them, to help them become a better player, and ultimately have more enjoyment. And once they get on that right path or in that right, get a nudge in that right direction, then to Jamie's point, they begin to have more fun. There's nothing more frustrating, and I don't care whether it's golf or whatever game or sport you want to throw in there, or even job title. If you're not enjoying and you're not, having some fun in what you're doing, then it's kind of like walking on a bed of coals. You don't know whether you're going to get burnt. You don't know what's going to happen, and you just stop enjoying it, and ultimately people give up. So I like both of your answers, and this question here really goes to the social aspect of golf, and I really thought about this one here, and I know we've talked about something similar before. Jamie, I'm going to come back to you, but I want you both to sort of throw your comments in here. There is a lot of golf marketing and social media revolved around golf being presented to the average golfer. I mean, we all get bombarded, but golfers are getting all kinds of messages through social media, and I don't mean just advertisements and things like that, but the latest and greatest technique and such, and this lesson plan and that lesson plan, and they're just bombarded. In your opinion, Jamie, I'm going to start with you, and then Bill, I'm going to get you to jump in. Are we overwhelming the golf market with too much information? If so, why?
That's a great question.
Ted.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Jamie, go ahead and start off.
I was just pitching in on that. Sorry. Yeah, that was awesome. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, we're both just loving your questions, Ted. Okay, so are people being overwhelmed by too much? It's like TMI, right? Too much information.
Yep. And
I would say, in many ways, yes. It's like, there is so much information out there, and a lot of people have a lot of great stuff to say and contribute, and everybody wants to make videos and write stuff and make some money and get more students, and we understand it all. And hopefully there's, enough golfers and enough demand out there for everybody. At the same time, it's kind of an old and a new issue. Like, I think about my dad. So that was many, many years ago. We'll say, 30, 40, 50 years ago when he was kind of learning golf. And he paid attention to just about everything he heard. And he would read something here and do something there. And that was before we had this glut through the Internet. And he would have a new answer every 5 to 7 days. He had the new secret to golf, and he would try this, and then he would try that, and then he would try that, and he was convinced that now he's got it, And I got to tell you, the guy hardly broke 100. I mean, he sort of maybe shot in the 90s sometimes. My mom was different. She was like shooting in the low 80s. She was something else, and she just kind of had a way, and she worked with that, and she put new things in there, but she knew what she was doing. My dad just, played around with this and that and that and that so much that he never really got anywhere. I will say that once he started to become a key eye golfer with me and I gave him a consistent thing to do, by then he was in his 80s and he was willing, he actually improved. He was improving like it was amazing how much he improved. It was cool. But so to the point, I think that's just been a tendency, a human nature tendency in people and golfers forever, is to find the answer, the fix, the cure, the thing that's going to do it. But and if you take that and then you feed it with the glut of information on apps and TV, 24/7 golf channel, just everything, and so many choices and so much equipment, and now this and now that, I think we can have an issue, and some people do have an issue where there's just too much, and they're trying this and trying that, and not getting anywhere. That can become a problem in and of itself. I think it's important for people to find something, someone, some teacher, some approach that makes sense to them, that works for their body, that works for their learning style, that works for their temperament, and then kind of stay in that vein for the most part. Instead of jumping, like a bean from here to there and there. I think that can really be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm inside. I'm laughing, in your analogy that you gave of your father, because I know so many people that fit into that mold that learned the game at some point, sort of old school, and now all of a sudden with the information age, Bill, we've got all of this, media coming at us and saying, hey, you got to try this and got to try. And I equate it to how the fitness industry and how the weight loss industry used to be. It still is to some degree. Now it's just, you pop a pill and so on. But, years ago, I can remember many people collecting dust in their garage with all of the fitness equipment and gadgets that they were buying, lose 20 pounds by, pressing this abductor or whatever the heck it was called. I don't remember now. But so, Bill, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I'm sure you agree with much of what Jamie said, but you might have some other thoughts as well. But, we're getting bombarded with so many messages. The average golfer is that, it's just, one thing and another, as we move day to day, something new. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of soup du jour instructional thoughts out there. And Jamie, you and I have both seen them. We've been at this long enough that in the last 20 years, there's a technique du jour that everybody's doing, and a few tour players do it, and then they fall off the planet. And I think there's a couple things that I coined a phrase back in the 90s, and I called it the FedEx syndrome. People want something, they order it now, and they want it yesterday. So, there's no patience, and they want that quick fix, and they want it, this is the best thing, and this is going to work forever. And I think that's a big part of the issue. And what with that goes on, things that players are doing right, they abandon those in hopes of finding something else. And as an instructor, what I always look for first is the things that I feel that people have a proficiency to do and an efficiency to do, and then I go to look for where the oil leaks are, so to speak, and get those patched up so the engine runs good without flaring oil or losing tires. And I think that's one of the things that's with this glut of information, there's not the ability to do that. I've found far too many people that abandon, principles and things and setup wise and, mechanics that they do very well because they're jumping on this swing du jour, so to speak. And it just isn't efficient. It doesn't match their interpretation style. It doesn't match their release patterns. And they just take things that they've done well and ditch them, and then all of a sudden they're confused and there's no clarity. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to have in instruction is you have to define and clarify, what you want to do and what needs to be done to get that to happen. And with the and I've got videos out there and everything, but I try to keep them a little bit more I don't want to say nonpartisan or agnostic, so to speak, because I don't want people to overwhelm. It's just more or less little drills to help with certain pieces of their swing.
I think what it boils down to is this. We obviously have to, in any business nowadays, technology is here. We've talked about technology in the past. And, I'm a firm believer. I love some of the technology out there, but it has its place. I think where we run into the problem here, as I was mentioning earlier, and as both of you have brought up, is there is so much information that sometimes, the average person now that comes out and takes a lesson, they're rushing through the grip, the stance, and the posture, all that. They want to get to, the meat and potatoes. They don't want to, put together those building blocks anymore. They see this. And as far as, as you put the soup du jour, if you will, Bill, some of the problem with a lot of these things that have come over the years, over the last decade or so, is that they've sort of pigeonholed everybody into the same box. And the problem with that is, as we're discovering as more time goes by, is we are all uniquely different. We different shapes, different sizes, different abilities. And to try and teach a singular method to the masses just does not work. Certainly not effective. Some will grapple to it. Some will benefit from it, but many won't. And I truly believe because of the aggressiveness of the marketing and platforms that have been made out there, and I'm not talking about the individual instructors, what you're talking about, Bill and Jamie, I know you've got some website and so forth that has things. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the overall agenda of, let's get everybody swinging this way or let's get everybody swinging that way. I truly believe that is what has caused a lot of people, not just beginners, but even some seasoned golfers to leave the game out of frustration. And I think we've got to be smarter about it. We've certainly got to take advantage whenever possible of social media and of marketing opportunities. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant that people are being bombarded with so much information. And if we're just adding on to the heap and not really targeting that specific individual or that individual over here, and just sort of blanking it out to the masses and expecting we've got the magic sauce here to add to that soup, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where more and more people are going to go. And we have a very unique opportunity this year. We've been very blessed, I believe, in the golf industry because of the pandemic and that more and more people have come out. And this leads into my very last question, and we have a little bit of time to do it. But my last question is this. For the listeners out there who are new to golf this season, and there are many out there, I want each of you just to put together just a brief checklist of what you would say to them or what you would like to get them started on the right path so that they're not getting all of these mixed signals and that. So if you had that student that's just new to the game this year, maybe they were forced to get out because of the pandemic and they just had to get out of the house, didn't want to not watch Netflix anymore or what have you. Jamie, I'm going to let you go first and then Bill.
I just love your questions, Ted. They're awesome. So the first thing is I always like to talk to people about the PGA and the LPGA, like, what does that mean? And so the PGA is posture grip alignment, and LPGA is love your posture grip alignment. So that should feel comfortable. It should be aligned. It should be balanced. It should be a center. So we'll go into what loving your posture grip alignment means. And obviously we're working on posture grip alignment. Those are, the fundamentals of golf. And a nice way to remember them and then to work on them. And, how do you get comfortable? And that presence in your body. I teach them about centering and balance, and I go through kind of lower upper body. I talk to them about and have them understand that and to feel that they've already got a head start on this because golf is a throw the ball sport, not a hit the ball sport. So what that means is the way that you throw balls. Everybody can do an underhand pitch or throw a ball, and even when they're not that athletic, they can. We study their motion, and they tend to push off from their foot and their back knee, and then comes their hand and their arm, and, like an extension. And so we play catch, and then we play golf catch, turning sideways to, throw the ball and work on those same kind of body mechanics and that sense of that sort of arc and flow with their arm. And so they're already starting to get, just some real basics of it and things that they can relate to. The other thing that I talk to them about is when do you do a swing? When have swings been in your life? And that tends to be a swing, right, as a kid. And when you were a kid or your kids, you go there and playground and they get them on a swing. And when you sit down on the swings, there's a couple things. One is it has a set. Without a swing set, there's no swinging, and that set needs to be stable, right? You get these big, strong bars set in concrete. So we have a stable set, and they can start to understand stability and balance and containment of energy. And then you sit in the middle, right, and put your butt in there. To get the swing moving, you can pull all day on the ropes or chains, but with your hands, you're not going nowhere. To get things moving, it starts from the feet. There's a push with the feet. And then you go back, and then you go through, and you go back, and you go through. And the more you go back, the more you go through. There's an evenness, and that would be the backswing and the follow-through. And then there's the bottoming out, right, where the ball is. So, I try to relate in a few really solid basics that people know, from throwing a ball or swinging, and some principles, relate that to your posture grip alignment and loving it so that you're comfortable. The elements that make you comfortable, centering, relaxation, grounding, connection, and then we're off, Then there's, you can get more specific and work on more things, but those are the things that I like to really get people grounded in and feeling like they can already kind of do it, and they already kind of get it, and then we go.
I think that's a great way to start. I think working on some of those. Bill, I'm going to let you go. Looked like Jamie got cut off there, but Bill, I'm going to let you go. For the listeners out there, I know you've got a checklist that you would put together for those new golfers out there that have never been in the game before. They're just coming in from, whatever. What's your checklist going to be?
Well, the first thing is I'm going to find similarities in what they've done for a living and what activities they've done previously, and then kind of build the form work from there. First thing, as Jamie said, I work on the feet first, because that's where everything is. Then we work our way up the food chain, and I find a lot of times the grip will fix itself once we get the feet working correctly. You know, as long as a newer player kind of gets an idea where the club stays more in the fingertips and they're in a little better place, I don't get overly concerned with that at first. I have them do something very simple. If you've ever seen the Ben Hogan on the Ed Sullivan Show, where he gets his feet on the ground and just does a little pressure on the trail foot, then a little pressure on the lead foot, where the club swings when they've got that hug with their arms on their side. It's like a little Y swing. We start to work with that where they're maintaining an arc and a radius and start to hit some balls, and then from there we start to move faster. As they move faster, the club goes further each direction. And there you go. You build a swing from the ground up. I think that's the best way to go about doing it is look that up, and I've got the video there a ton. We call it the Hogan drill, and it's fantastic because it encompasses all the necessary pieces of the puzzle that are going to stick with this player forever.
Yeah, I think the simpler that we make it for them, I think the easier and more adaptive they will become. And sometimes, you know what, guys, we have to look back to move forward. Sometimes when we look back and at some of the more simple things in instruction, sometimes can be the easiest to educate moving forward. And there's lots of great theories out there. There's lots of great information that we've learned along the way that certainly has helped us in our journey as instructors and teachers and coaches and whatnot. But sometimes looking in the rearview mirror sometimes in the past can be a great tool as well. So, guys, thank you very much. It's been an interesting discussion, and I'm glad we were able to spend this time together. And as always, I'm going to give each of you just a quick moment or two to let the folks know if they want to reach out, the best way that they can go ahead and do that. So, Jamie, let you go first, and then Bill.
Sure. And I just want to say I can't agree with Bill more about the feet and the ground up. So important, the lower body. Well, people can reach me through my website, which is you can get to the same place through Kiai Golf, Kiai golf.com, or the Centered Way, Center ED, the centeredway.com. And you can just sign up for, you'll get emails and information and any questions. A good way to reach me. Also through the phone. I always say that. I like to talk, and I'm happy to connect directly. So that's 760-492-GOLF. 760-492-4653. And social media, Jamie Leno Zimron, like Jay Leno in the middle there, Jamie Leno Zimron on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And happy to talk and to let people know about different events and virtual lessons, and privately or in some group lessons. I also do a lot of fitness work online, so and counseling and coaching. So I'm happy to connect always. And thank you very much, Ted, and
Perfect.
Thank you, Bill. Great conversation.
Thank you. Bill, how about yourself? Best way that the folks, if they want to reach out, that they can do that?
Yeah, thanks again, Ted and Jamie. Great conversation tonight. Easiest way to get me is BillAbramsGolf.com. It's ABRAMS, just BillAbramsGolf.com. All my contact information, my email, phone number is 630-926-4554. And then on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're there, and we look forward to helping everybody out. We got a YouTube channel as well, and I do also. Let me add this: I have an app. If you go on either the iTunes store or on the Android store, it's under Golf Solutions Academy, and it's a free app. There is a paywall in there if you want to submit videos, very reasonably priced video submissions, but also you can utilize that, and it has a ton of good drills that are professionally shot on them that'll help your game.
Perfect. And it was Google Play was the word you were looking for Android. So Google Play or iTunes, you can get that app. Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys very, very much. all the best to both of you this season as we three wrap up our time together in 2020 here on the Coach's Corner panel, and I look forward to having you both join me again in a future show. So next year in 2021. So have a great holiday season. Be safe, both of you, and enjoy your time through the holidays. And I will see you next time here on the Coach's Corner panel here on Golf Talk Live. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
Ted.
you.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thanks for a wonderful year, Ted. Take care.
Absolutely. And
All
looking forward to the next one, to the new year. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right. That was the Coach's Corner panel. Jamie Leno-Zimron and Bill Abrams, as I mentioned, joining me here for the last of their show for this season. They'll be coming back, of course, in the new year for some more interesting segments. But I think it was a good discussion tonight. I really enjoyed I put a lot of thought in the questions tonight. I wanted to sort of end the year, or at least this session of it, with a bang, as they say. And I think we did a good job, and they certainly did a great job. All right, before I introduce my guest, just a quick little commercial that I want to play. This is a great product. You know, we're all very, very conscious socially and whatnot during this difficult time globally. And my good friend Byron Casper, of course, son of legendary Billy Casper, introduced me to this product, and it's called Golf Nicks. And it's basically a product to wash your hands and you can clean golf carts and so on and so forth. Well, let me play the clip, and you can hear for yourself.
2020 hasn't been exactly what any of us expected, but the one thing we have in common is the need to cleanse and stay clean. Doctor recommended and approved, Golf Nicks is a hand and skin cleanser that can be used daily. Clean your hands, shoes, clubs, your golf cart, and use it around your home. It leaves no sticky residue and moisturizes your skin. Keep clean and avoid those pesky germs that exist all around us today. Golf Nicks is your natural solution to keep clean. Check it out at golfnicks.com. That's golf, NIX.com.
All right. It's a great product. I had some samples shipped to me, and it is a great product. What I really like about it is it's non-toxic, it's very environmentally safe, and non-alcoholic. So you have a lot of great ingredients in there. And for those of you that are listening to the show and also subscribe to Golf Tips Magazine, you know what I'm going to say here next. If you go to golfnicks.com and make a purchase, and in the checkout, you'll see for a promo code, if you enter Golf Tips 2021, you'll save an additional 10% off of your order. So go tonight after the show, go to golfnicks.com, place your order, enter in the section for the promo code Golf Tips 2021, and receive an extra 10% off your order. It's well worth it. It's a great, great product, and we're happy to present it to you here on Golf Talk Live. All right, I'm very, very excited about this evening's guest. We actually had as we call it, a test call a little bit earlier on today. He is, of course, as we say, calling from across the pond, and I'm very, very excited to have him. It's very early in the morning where he is, not here on Central Time. He's on a different time zone. And I'm going to introduce him now. He is, of course, Iain Lowe. He is the author, and publisher of Scotland, Home of Golf, as well as the owner of Iain Lowe Photography. Iain joined the Royal Air Force in 1970 as a photographer and served 24 years. In 1994, he and his wife purchased a guest house in St. Andrews, which they ran for 5 years. At the same time, he started the Iain Lowe Photography, Golf Course Photography, and published his first book in 1999, St. Andrews and the Open Championship, Official History. The award-winning Scottish Golf Links, A Photographer's Journey, was published in 2004. He's put together a total of 8 books now published. In 2007, his son Chris joined the business and brought the company into the digital age. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. In 2010, they added course guides and scorecards to their service. In 2014, they became CAA licensed for aerial drone photography and video. And in 2020, Iain and Chris published Scotland, Home of Golf. please welcome my very special guest, Iain Lowe. Good evening,
Ted,
Iain, and welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Yeah, Ted, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, I appreciate it. I certainly can. Yes, I can hear you just well.
Okay, good.
All right, so
yeah, thank you.
We talked this.
Thank you very much for. I'm sorry.
No, you're quite welcome. I appreciate you joining me, and I'm very excited to have you on for a number of reasons. As you heard, we had a great conversation this afternoon. We kind of did a test run, if you will, being that you're calling from overseas, and we wanted to make sure everything was right. And here we are. So we're gonna get down to business. What I wanted to do, Iain, as I mentioned to you earlier today on the phone, before we get into the book and into the business specifically, I thought it would be really good if you could share a little bit about your history when it comes to golf. In other words, how did you get introduced to the game? Sort of who introduced you, and how were you introduced? And are you an avid golfer? Share that with us.
Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed to start the story of my golf on your show because I was not a golfer. Military life, the military has always encouraged sport, and my sports were, of which I was consumed by them, water polo, anything to do with the mountains, skiing. I was a ski instructor, mountains, an expedition leader, and also played badminton, but other sports as well. So I did know one end of a club from another, but I didn't know anything at all about golf until my final assignment from Germany to Scotland, to the air base just across the water from St Andrews, brought me right into the heart of golf. And, that's where it started. My game of golf is enthusiastic. I think it's probably the best. It's probably the best description. I haven't played a lot in the last couple of years. I mean, this year, obviously, there's been so much going on, and last year I was unable to for personal reasons. But my home course was and is St Andrews, and the courses around there, the old course in particular. My first experience of golf, and I think this is what really hooked me in to the game of golf, was my wife and my son and myself had arrived at RAF Lucas, and we had a little drive across to St Andrews, parked up beside the 18th green. First visit there. It was a summer's evening, I think probably, I don't know the date, July or August, but the sun was dropping, and there was probably, I suppose, 30 or 40 golfers watching club players come in. Polite applause for a good putt or a good approach shot. And there's a green lattice fence at the back and to the right of the 18th green. And we were looking across from the right-hand side through the green to the R&A. And then I just saw, it sounds beyond belief, but I just saw a hand come through the lattice fence. I never saw the person. And they stroked the grass, the rough grass on the bank. And it was just, to me, it just felt like an indication of love, almost like a devotion from somebody. And I really, it sent tingles up my spine. And from that day on, I was totally hooked on the game, photographing the courses, but particularly the people who travel from one golf course to another, visit our golf courses or visit golf courses in England or Ireland or around America. The golf pilgrims who love the game so much they want to experience different courses. So that one small gesture was my hook into golf.
Wow. It's interesting because it's a unique story, because typically, and as I mentioned to you earlier today, one of the reasons I like to start with that question, especially with a new guest that's never been on the program before, is I like to kind of get an idea, a feel of what drew them to the game. And, typically it's, well, my father, took me out to the golf course or the driving range and, he taught me how to putt and a typical thing. But you had a much different experience, very unique experience, and obviously, but equally as passionate, and essentially drew you into the game. And obviously, as you mentioned, you were very enthusiastic and a willing participant and maybe never had quite the vision that some have of battling it out with some of the best in the world, but nevertheless, you had a love in the game from a different vantage point. So obviously you had a sports background. You played a number of different sports, as you mentioned, and were involved directly, and obviously had have dabbled in the game of golf over the years as well. And you touched on a little bit what sort of brought you into photography pertaining to golf, that is. So what prompted you to put together your first book? We're going to talk about your current book, but your first book, which I mentioned, was published in 1999, St. Andrews and the Open Championship, Official History, obviously a very historical book. What prompted you to put that together?
It's like most things, in life, that when you work on something, your perspective of where that something should go increases. And so it was with photography of golf courses. It was a very simple start. I started out with one photograph that was sold in Octoloni's golf shop in St. Andrews, and it was a picture of the R&A at night, so lit up by the lights in front of it, and with a full moon beyond it. That was my start. And that recognition of having a shop accept my submission and people being prepared to buy it was a massive step for me. But from then, I spent more and more time on the old course trying to get the different images that showed the course that players play, but because of the heat of battle that they're in, and also the sun being very high in the sky, they never actually see the playing surface. They don't see the gentle undulations or wild undulations on the fairways, or the true depth of the bunkers unless they go in them and they can't see daylight anymore. But
right.
So that's what it was. It was to work on getting the golf course for people to be able to see it in a way that they wouldn't normally see it. And I produced a calendar in 1997, and I sent a copy out to a number of publishers. Naively, I thought I had enough images to do a book, just of pictures, which I didn't. But I sent it out to a number of publishers in the UK and one in America. I had 4 rejections from publishers in the UK saying that the size of the task was too complex and they couldn't envisage how it would look. Whereas the one publisher in America, which was Sleeping Bear Press, Brian Lewis up in Michigan, he got in touch with me, and I flew out to New York, had a meeting with him there, and we agreed, signed up a contract to, in principle, produce a book. And then with the Open coming in the millennium, he was successful as being the publisher for the Official History, and we had the UK rights. And that's where that first book came from.
And then you progressed along, as I mentioned, and now you have you have 8 books published. Doing one book, for some might say, wow, that's a feat and an accomplishment. But that wasn't enough for you. You decided, you wanted to pursue that even more, which again is very unique. You could have gone and done a bunch of other projects and things, which you may or may not have done, but you sort of kept that going. And we'll talk about your current book here in a moment, but what prompted you to come out with some more titles?
Well, the second title was The Photographer's Journey, which it won the sports and recreation title for independent publishers in the USA. That was an expansion of what we've been doing at St. Andrews. I had all the images I needed of St. Andrews, and I was just thirsty to understand more about the links courses of Scotland. I didn't know any of them. I only knew St Andrews. I had no experience of anything else. So, this is going back in the days. There were no other golf course photographers around really in Scotland. Brian Morgan was still shooting, but apart from that, nobody else. And we weren't always welcome. We certainly weren't embraced the way we are now as a pivotal part of a marketing package. So sometimes, you would be welcomed onto a course, and sometimes the welcome wasn't so warm because you were perceived to maybe disrupt golfers, or
right.
I don't know. But anyway, so I started to go travel around and spent pretty much 3 years on the road, and then selected from that nearly 50 courses for the photographer's journey. But at the same time as that, King's Barnes had opened. And I'd started work for King's Barnes in 1990. Well, that was my first commission in 97 when it was farmland. But then I started work for the current owner in 1999 during construction. But I met the architect, Kyle Phillips, and got to know him quite well. So again, with David Joy, the historian, and with Kyle Phillips' input about the architecture of links courses, we started to formulate this idea of a book that would be both historical, visual, and architectural. And by then, Sleeping Bear Press had changed to Clock Tower Press, and Brian Lewis was still there. And that book came out, and it was... It's a funny thing, you said about the first book would be a big thing, and it we've talked earlier on when we were talking, we were both compared military backgrounds. So when you come from a military background where you don't think of putting yourself out there in a commercial sense,
right.
You're more about the guy on your left and your right and your team at your workplace. That first book was certainly very humbling, especially as it was the old course and it was the official history. And the second book, award-winning, again, encompassing such a lot of courses, was a similar effect. But it's never a case that I have ever felt I've got to do a book. I've got to keep my profile, or when Chris joined the business, our profile, we need to do a book. That's never been the case. The only times we've brought books out is when technology allows us to present the links courses in a way that we haven't been able to present them in the past. So we started with helicopters, which was very expensive. We used that a little bit in the photographer's journey. But then drones in 2016, 2014, made a massive difference. We were now able to get airborne over the golf course when the conditions were right for the photograph, not when the helicopter was available. So that's really sort of taking you through the process from 2000 right the way up to 2020.
What's interesting, and you mentioned Chris, and we'll talk about him now as well. You mentioned the fact, and as I did in the intro, in around 2007, he joined the business and essentially brought you and the company into the digital age. We talked a little bit about the digital age, you and I earlier, and it can be a little daunting and overwhelming, at times. But obviously the younger generation, as that's something that many of them have been brought up in at a very early age. So, what was his interest in taking part in this? I mean, what was his sort of intro to golf? Was it through your own experiences, or did he have his own experience in golf? And what made him decide to want to, become a part of what you're doing, as opposed to, maybe doing something else on his own?
His golf experiences were playing golf with me, and also in St Andrews. The children of St Andrews, the school children of St Andrews, at that time, I don't know if it's still the fact, but they didn't pay for golf at all. So if I went out on the golf course, he would come with me. At the age of 13 or 14, if I was out on an evening shoot, and it was a weekend in particular, he would come out on the shoot. If we were going to Glasgow to get the films processed. He would come with me on that. So he was, I suppose, like all children who are exposed to a family business, he was part of that business from a very early age, and it did have an influence on him. I've got to say, he is a golfer. I'm not. He has a swing to die for, and hits at a country mile, and he hits at a country mile straight. But the golf and the photography work together. In fact, sometimes we're as happy with a camera on a golf course as we would be with golf clubs. Strange thing to say, but so when Chris came into the business, he had just finished a degree at a university in Edinburgh in graphics, graphics and design, and his initial thought was actually to go into finance. He joined a bank, and my business was getting busier and busier, and I just said to him, this is where I am, and I either restrict what I do as a business, or see if you would like to join it. Well, fortunately for me, he said he'd join it. As you say, he brought me into the digital age. He straight away got a website up and running. And this is in the days of film. All of my library from the previous 15 years was on film. So we bought a commercial scanner and scanned in probably thousands of images. Encouraged me to spend the money on digital cameras, encouraged us to go for the licensing, and has just continued to push the bounds of what we do all the time. Youthful energy, which is needed.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I've had to push myself over the years as well, doing the things that I've done. And what's really interesting is again, he's obviously seen over the years what you've done. He's familiar with what you've done, but now he brings in a different perspective. He's able to say, okay, Dad, let's scan these images up. Let's get them loaded up here digitally because you could do so much more with them. I mean, the film is great and it's a great archive to have, but you're limited on what you can do. It's much trickier and dodgier, as they say, to work with film compared to the technology that's out there today. So, and obviously getting you a more social media presence, with the website and things like that now opens the door even further. And you mentioned a few moments ago, you talked about, getting the license for aerial drone photography. Again, ditching those expensive helicopter rides to get out and do the same thing. You can now fly the drone over. That obviously has had to make a big difference in how you approach things, because now you can do things that normally you would probably have to, in addition to scheduling the time to get access to the course and so forth, if you now had to fly a helicopter over, you got a whole other issue of, interfering with players and bothering that sort of thing. Where a drone, you can elevate it high enough and it's quiet and, nobody hears it. That obviously has made a big impact in your business as well, correct?
Oh, huge. You can't overstate how big that has been. And for us, drones, they've been even bigger than the coming of the digital camera, because we can get into places that we would never get into with a helicopter. We have 5 different drones, carry a number of different payloads, and therefore a number of different lenses as well. So we can put the drone to just 15 feet high. That just gives you a little bit of elevation, so you can see a little bit of information, but it still gives the golfers perspective. Or we can go up to 400 feet, and you can just show, with the low sun, you can just show these magnificent vistas. So it's huge what that's done. They're frustrating at times because there are limitations, flying when you've got great weather, but it's too windy. But no, we fully embrace it. But I wouldn't have done it on my own.
Right, and that's the point I'm getting at is this is where you've kind of in a sense married your experience with his youthful enthusiasm and his experience as it relates to a more modern, up-to-date, technological, whatever you want to phrase it as, he's now introducing you to things that maybe normally you would not have, grappled to. And, we talked earlier, about technology, and we won't get into it all now, but, just amazing what things you can do now. So he's really opened a door that you might not have opened yourself had he not been there to say, hey, Dad, this is something that we need to really work on. So it was definitely a blessing. And I can tell you, if he happens to hear this, he would have been bored stiff working in the bank. I can guarantee you that, because I've worked in the finance end myself. So it was a good career choice on his part. He'd have a lot more fun doing this. But so let's talk about the book. But I want to phrase the question in such a way, given our current times. Your recent book, as I mentioned, is Scotland, Home of Golf. Why did you decide to publish this book, especially during a global pandemic? You've obviously had a lot of success. That's a bit risky, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was, a book is a naturally expensive project to undertake. There were challenges as far as the controlling of the project. We normally visit the factory and oversee the printing, which of course just was not possible this time. But we'd been working. We hadn't been working on a book, but we had been working to acquire a comprehensive set of new imagery of all the golf courses in Scotland that people will be familiar with. We've been doing that for probably 6 years because we got drones and we were able to do different types of shots. So we had quite a large library of images available. I had, about 18 months ago, got in touch with one of our printers and got a quote for doing a new Scottish book, but had taken it no further. We had a lot of other projects going on, a lot of work which were not completely tied around drones. So that was sort of put on the back burner. Then, we had a brilliant year last year, and we expanded our range of products considerably. And then, the pandemic hit. So we decided to close up at the beginning of March because we'd seen what was happening in Italy, and we thought it was going to come here and be as bad. So, with the offices in St Andrews, we locked that up, and we never went back there for about 6 or 8 weeks. And Chris was put on furlough. The government came in and helped with that, so he went on furlough. And that was it. I just was tinkering around. I went out on my bike. I was getting fitter than I'd ever got, through March.
Right.
And then I just looked at what was ahead, and photography is a bit like an addiction. You don't seek the praise or the recognition or anything like that. You seek the image. That's what you're after, is the image that moves you internally from the experiences you've made and seen to get that image. And there was no prospect of any imagery this year as far as I could see. So I started just sort of throwing the idea of a book around and putting a list of courses together. Got in touch with our designer that we've used for, 10, 12 years, 16 years, up in Ann Arbor, a Savitsky design, Mike Savitsky, and got in touch with him, got a quote for a book, then decided that if I was going to do a book, we had to go for a really quality printer. And the only way, we had 2 recommendations, both of them in America, so we went for an American printer. And then through April, it was a case of just working out the finances, working out how the book would pace, what the content would be. Got in touch with David Joy, the author and illustrator, and we discussed that. So in sort of June, David really got down to writing the book. He'd got a lot of imagery from me to give him an idea of where we were going with it. And I then, because Chris couldn't work due to furlough, so I went to Prestwick on one visit. Left the house at 2:30 in the morning, got on the course at 4:15 in the morning. I was back home at 8 o'clock in the morning, but just for 2 pictures. So where I saw gaps, which was pretty much every one of the 14 courses, where I saw gaps in the strength of the imagery, I reshot it. And then it was then a decision whether to go for it or not, because it is a huge financial risk. But I figured that it had given me a lot of pleasure doing the book, just getting the imagery. And I thought there's going to be thousands and thousands of golfers from around the world who have had their holidays cancelled, or people have had their golf entirely cancelled. And maybe come the autumn, by the time we would get the book out, it would be something that would lift people's spirits, maybe allow them to be transported away from, I'm going to use the word horror, because it is in some places the horror that has surrounded us in these days.
Right.
And that's what the book, that was sort of that was a driving force behind the book.
It's interesting that you say that, and I think we might have touched on this a little bit earlier on in our conversation this afternoon, but I've said this many times over the last few months. But golf here, particularly in America, has really received somewhat of what I call a booster shot in the arm as a result of this pandemic. As difficult and as tragic it has been for many, many people, and I certainly don't want to take away from that tragedy or discount it. But golf really has, as you've come to learn in your time playing, has kind of a built-in social distancing, if you will, and is very easy to adapt to our current situation. And really, golf was one of the only games that people were able, for the most part, I mean, very early on in the very early stages, in March, obviously there were lockdowns and shut-ins and whatnot, but they quickly realized that this was something that they could allow people to do, certainly with some restriction. But it allowed people to get out and, get away from the television and so forth, and just get out and have some fun. So it really plays into what you just said, and that is, people need an escape when you're in a difficult situation. And I can see, I mean, for the newer golfers, it might be a little bit different because they're not quite bitten by the bug yet. But for the longer, term golfers, the ones that have been playing for many, many decades, they're really going to appreciate this book because, they've watched the Opens over the years over there at St. Andrews and some of the other courses that I'm sure are in the book, and the various, European tournaments. So for them, they're going to have a lot of memories. They're going to come back maybe when they came over and played, or something they saw on television. Having said that, you selected a number of different courses for this book. How did you decide what courses you were going to put in this book?
The selection process was actually a little bit easier than you might imagine. I mean, we've got, as I said in my earlier on, the second book had 50 or 52 courses in it. But this time I wanted to concentrate on courses that had either were new, so there's 4 new courses in it, but new at championship level. They had to be the course that people would still aspire to come and visit and play, because even though they're new, they have the same principle of design, risk and reward, and fun that the Old Links courses do. So those 4 were put in, just to list them from top to bottom: Castle Stewart up in the north, Trump International just north of Aberdeen, Kingsbarns, and then Dunbarney Links, just outside St Andrews as well. And then a remodel of Trump Turnberry as well. So that was the new ones. But the old ones, David Joy and we've done a number of books together now, but we have always discussed, and it's David that drives this, there has been a continual challenge between the tradition of the game of golf and technology. Well, nowadays, you actually have to put technology, you have to add into that the physical attributes of the player. So when I started looking at putting the history inside of it in, I didn't want to use photography. I wanted to use illustrations because I feel they're more personal. And the golfers that we put in are the guys that they pushed at the bounds of golf for centuries. From young Tom Morris, back in 1870, age of 20 years old when he won the Open, playing the first hole at Prestwick, which was 570 yards, just over, and he scored a 3, 570 yards. So, I mean, that effect is what has continued throughout, where golfers, they press the physical boundaries of the course to contain the golfer, so the courses expand. And this has gone on, new bunkers go in. This has gone on for at least 150 years.
Right.
And it was just, I just find that side of things both challenging to see where the authorities go now with the distances that are being hit this year, and the challenges that the golf courses had to deal with in the past. There was the land available, so they were able to expand in days gone by. But now, and then it just happened, of course, that Bryson came in and took the game by the scruff of the neck at the U.S. Open, which was. I mean, I'm across the pond, and I don't know any. I only know a couple of courses in America. I'm not familiar with many at all. But that U.S. Open was the most riveting golf I have seen for a long, long time. And of course, it then dangled the prospect of what he might be able to do at Augusta, which obviously he was unsuccessful. But he wasn't the only one who was hitting the ball huge distances. So the fact that we've mentioned these old golfers, and I say with respect to go old, I'm going up to Nicklaus and even Tiger Woods up in 2000. They continue to press, and they have. I mean, Tiger Woods in '97, what he did was just incredible. Nobody had seen anything like it. But we're seeing it again now, and so the book is almost like an underlying theme in the book. So the courses had to reflect. Going back to the courses, it had to reflect the changes that had occurred to links courses to accommodate these big players. And when you do that, you sometimes go to courses that may not be an Open Championship rotor course, but they are such significant courses, you can't leave them out of the book. So the selection process was probably easier than you would think.
What I find interesting is, about our discussion, when you talk obviously very passionately about photography, is you obviously have an eye, number one, for the photography, but not having, and I go back to what I said earlier, when I asked you about what your sort of background in golf was, and as I mentioned, typically, most stories you hear, well, I grew up playing with my father or a family member or such, and you obviously had a much different approach. But you've obviously developed a very keen eye for golf. It's one thing for photography in general. Obviously, as a photographer, you're going to have that keen eye, but you've managed to capture the essence of golf, not being a quote unquote, your everyday golfer. Your background is not the same as many others. It certainly, and again, I don't want to take away from what you've done, but you understand what I'm getting at. So
yeah.
My question for you is, number one, do you have a favorite links course that you like to photograph? And but I also want you to answer is, how did you develop that eye for golf that's allowed you to capture the images? How do you decide what image? Because you're not just going out and shooting the 18 holes and, well, here's the 18 holes. You're actually very selective in what imagery you're looking for. So let me know, first off, what's your favorite links course that you enjoy photographing? And then how do you decide what you want to put in the book?
Okay. This is going to sound, again, almost like sacrilege when you consider that my season ticket is St. Andrews. And you would think I would just say immediately St. Andrews Old Course. And, for anybody who aspires to come to Scotland and play the Old Course, you have got to do it, because no golf course is ever 18 holes that you play. Every one of them is special. You're playing with friends. You're challenging yourself at every point. But when you play the old course, you're walking in the footsteps of the heroes that you've held probably if you played golf from a young age, that you've known from a very young age. You're able to go in there and play on these enormous putting surfaces. One of the longest greens, well, they're double greens, the majority of them. It's 110 yards wide. So if you snap hook right on your approach, you can have a 110 yard putt and try and get down in tooth apart. So, and the bunkers are huge as well. So I would just say, please put it on your bucket list and try and get there. I played the old course a lot of times. I've got to say this, and this isn't bragging, it's because I very rarely have any success on a golf course. But I did once, out of the many rounds of golf I've played on the old course, I did once get a 3 on the 17th. And the 17th is considered the toughest hole in the Open Championship. I basically hit 2 bad shots to the green and sunk a 30-foot putt. So nothing there was ever skill. It was all luck. But you can do that on the old course. So the old course you would think would be my choice. But actually, and I'm biased when I tell you my selection, it is Kings Barnes. Kings Barnes was my very first commission when I left the Air Force in 1997. It was the first job I got working on a golf course. It was just farmland in those days. And Chris and I have worked on there ever since. We've produced 2 or 3 videos for them. We supply their course guides and a number of other products. But we've been shooting it intensively, supplying them with new images every year for about 10 years. Might be a bit longer than that, actually. And we're never short of finding a new way of expressing what that golf course is. It's a visual feast for a photographer. It's a golfing feast for a golfer as well. The North Sea is right on your elbow so many times. But that's my favorite links course. And then as to which holes you go for, it's never easy to decide. There's signature holes. Okay, so if you're going to go to Prestwick, it's going to be the 17th Sahara. If you're going to go to Royal Troon, it's got to be the postage stamp. The old course, well, it's got to be the town in the background. Turnberry, well, there's a lot of very good holes there now since they've done the changes, but it's going to be the 9th, the par 3, and then the lighthouse is your halfway house. Carnoustie, but it's got to be Hogan's Alley. You've only got to stand on Hogan's Alley and marvel at what that man did, especially coming back from a car crash to play that and win that. His only visit to Scotland, that one visit, and he won. So some holes are automatically there to be photographed. You just have to work out where the sun is going to be to give you the best angle to show that hole off in the best light. I would say there's probably a couple of holes on nearly every golf course that you would want to get into the book. But then there are another, half dozen or more that you would like to have in the book, and you have to be a bit disciplined in cutting those back. I think that about covers it. Especially the other thing is when you get unique architecture. I'm going to go up to Royal Dornoch, which is the course that's the most northerly in the book. And, the green, which green is it? I think it's the 3rd green. It is shaped like the bow of a boat. And then you've got Foxy, which is Tom Watson's favorite golf hole. It doesn't have a bunker on it. So, there's a lot of golf holes out there to photograph.
It's amazing because, again, obviously, you've played many rounds of golf, but you're not typically coming from a golf background. And to be able to just, in your mind's eye, see, okay, this is something that I know is going to appeal, particularly to the golfing enthusiast, to be able to capture those images in such a way that allows the reader and through visual cues and that, to almost feel like they're there. I mean, I've looked through, I've scanned through the entire book because that's going to be my treat through Christmas. But I've got your book, and I'm going to go through it all. But just visually, from what I've seen so far, I mean, you feel like you're right there. You're standing right there on that hole. And obviously, as you mentioned a few times, David Joy's illustrations as well sort of bring it home, especially for those that are really well entrenched in the game. So, kudos, as they say, to you for being able to put that together, because I know that's not an easy task, even for the best, under perfect circumstances. But you've managed to, in your career, being able to articulate this game in such a way. And it's interesting because you've done several books along the same line, but each one is uniquely different. Which brings me to this question here is, what is your latest project? What are you working on now?
Well, of course, the book has consumed most of the year with the process of getting it through to print, and then obviously the marketing. The business, the photography business, has been very restricted because of COVID, and
right.
So a number of things that we would have wanted to do, we've not been able to do. We have been fortunate, in fact, honored to be invited to go up to Nairn Golf Club, which is just up in the north near Inverness, not far from Castle Stewart and Inverness Airport, to undertake aerial photography and an aerial video. So we've just finished that, and it sort of enthused me. I was unsure whether Chris and I, because I brought Chris out of furlough to do, I think we were up there 3 times or 4 times. And the difficulty in Scotland is getting the weather. That's the biggest challenge.
Right.
And if it's a lynx, especially you want it in the early morning or the late night when the sun's very low in the sky. So you could have a nice blue sky over the top of you, and then on the horizon there's a bit of cloud and you don't get a picture. But so the weather's a challenge, and then with links courses, if you can, you need to have the tide in. You've got to have a high tide, otherwise it really doesn't bring the drama of the course and the hole into play. But I think you say about getting the perspective. Although I play golf. In fact, a lot of my closest friends would argue that term as well, that I play it. It's, in fact, the guys up until this year, the guys that I used to play with on a Saturday morning, we'd go out at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and play 18 holes. And we all seem to take more pleasure in each other's failures than each other's successes. So that sort of sets the standard for the golf. Golf is, I'm just going to, before I go into the photography, you mentioned about the uplift in golf. It is good for the soul to get out. It is good for the soul to have company in competition, not only with yourself, but with them and with the course. And I think, after the lockdown, people were just desperate to get out. And I think we all, in different ways, appreciate things that we had taken away for a while. And I firmly believe, I believe that golf will continue this renaissance, and that membership will continue to be maintained, and more people will take it up. It's just good for the soul. Just talking about the photography, you said earlier on, you asked, how it would go from, you had sort of suggested going from a military background of photography where, you will guess, we really didn't photograph golf courses very much in the Air Force,
no.
unless we bombed them. So
right.
So it was a landscape photography, and it's like everything when you're starting something new. You may have a skill set, but you have a lot of failure to get it right. And I think that's what it was. It was just, grinding away and learning, how to get the shots that got it in there. But it's consumed me now. I'm just, and that was a good thing about doing Nairn was to get back out with a camera on a commercial project, but on a course that we knew, but we had never seen in that sort of light. We didn't have the same appreciation of that golf course that we have now. So I certainly for myself, and I know for Chris, we are just aching to get back out. And even if we're only going out for some practice flying or some practice photography, to get out there, even through these winter months, and get some photography.
Yeah, I think, it's so important, I think, for just going quickly back to a point you just made, for people to get out and to have that camaraderie again. And I've said this many, many times, on my program over the years. Golf is very unique compared to so many other games, sports, whatever, is it really does mimic life in so many ways. I mean, you have various challenges. I mean, in competitiveness, you're competitive and, the game's over and so forth. But in golf, it's you against the elements. It's such an individual sport. Yes, there are team competitions as well. You've got the Ryder Cup and others. But it's such an individual. It's essentially you against the elements. You never know what you're going to get. You're not playing specifically. I mean, you're competing against another player, but you're not. It's not like football or soccer or something where you're butting heads and that. You got to go out there and you have to sort of use your mind, if you will, to navigate your way around the golf course. And a lot of people, I don't think, and hopefully more of them do now that have been able to get out, that have never played this game before, will realize, when they hear their friends who've played golf for years talk about it and think, I just don't get chasing that little white ball. I just don't get it. I hope they have a greater, well, you know what I mean. I hope they have a greater appreciation. Yeah. I hear you.
You're absolutely right. It's you said you're competing against the elements as well as the competing against the people that you're playing with or against. You're competing with yourself. It's such a disciplined game. It makes you're a golf professional, so you'll understand the patience things far more than I ever will on a golf course. But when the golfers are interviewed and they talk about staying patient, and I'm sort of I'm tearing my health out saying that, this is Augusta. How can you be patient? How do you control that golf swing when you're so excited? When you've got Rays Creek in front of you. And, of course, some people don't. They go into the creek. But it is such a disciplined course. And I absolutely agree that it's a unique sport. But the only other sport that I can think of, and somebody will probably come in and correct me with this, where the terrain has a major impact on your success or your score, is in the mountains, skiing. And I can't think of any other, with football, soccer, baseball, all of those are flat pitches, and they have no impact on the play at all. So
right, exactly.
It's just
no, you're 100% right on that analogy. And I've downhill skied as well, so I know the perils. Of course, my golf game is much better than my downhill skiing ever was, but so I have the same effect, I guess. But no, you raise a very interesting point though, and that is, when you get out and you play this game, besides the obvious again camaraderie that you have with your mates and so forth, you really are testing your patience. You're testing so many areas, and why I said it mimics life in so many ways is because when you think of the challenges that we face day to day in life, whether it be business and family life and so on and so forth, we have so many different hurdles and areas and lanes to navigate, and it's the same thing out in a golf course. So I'm a firm believer that they can kind of complement one another. If you learn to become successful out in the golf course and learn to overcome those obstacles and challenges, it's going to help you in your personal life. It's going to help you assess and understand, and vice versa. If you can do that in your personal life and in your home life and your business life, then that's going to help you be a better thinker. Because the truth of the matter is, golf has really nothing to do with the golf swing. That's just the mechanics of it. It's really what goes on. And Nicholas famously said, it's 90% mental and 10%. Well, it's actually 100% mental because you can't do anything without your brain. So, that's why these guys are so patient, because their confidence level in their ability to swing and hit the golf ball is so good that they're not thinking about that when they're out on the golf course. They're thinking about, what do I need to do to get the ball where I need to go? They know how to swing the golf club. They've been doing it for years. They know how far they can hit it. They know, it's a matter of overcoming the various challenges. And that's where the mental game comes in. And that's what stymies the rest of us compared to the guys that are out on tour, is we haven't figured that out yet. We're still trying to work on the perfect golf swing, and we're trying to, hit get the correct ball flight and so forth. When they're already have accomplished that, they're onto something a little bit more serious, and that is, what do I need to do to win this event? And it has nothing to do with the golf swing. Iain, before I let you go, as I told you earlier today, I said our time would go fast, and it certainly is. I know it's late for you. Yeah. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, number one. Let me first say it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you as my guest, and I'm definitely going to have you come back on in a future show. We'll talk more golf and talk about maybe some future projects that you'll have in the works. But I'd like for you to share, if you wouldn't mind, with the audience. For those, now that we're coming into the holidays, this would make a great Christmas gift, not only for that special golfer in the family, but maybe somebody that's been interested in the game would like to learn a little bit more about some of the history of the game. This is a great gift. So where can they get Scotland Home of Golf?
The easiest way in the USA is to go to Amazon.com and select books and golf, and then just or type in the title, and that'll take you straight through to our selling page on Amazon. They do the fulfillment, and you'll see on there there's a description about the book. We've got a number of photographs up there, quite a few reviews. We've been very fortunate to get some very generous reviews from different people. So if you've got a golfer, if you love golf, then this will be the book for you. It's what I want to do is to transport the reader. I want to take you away from where you are at that moment and just take you maybe back in time, as well as onto the links courses of Scotland. And hope to see some of you over in Scotland sometime in the near future.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling that they're just waiting for the go-ahead, and I think you're going to see a lot of people flying over. I think once the veil has been lifted, I think you'll see a lot of people coming over. But in the meantime, we've got to be safe, and we all understand that. But Iain, it really has been a pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation earlier today. Obviously different from golf, but we can't share that here on air. But we'll have to continue that conversation. We'll have to continue that conversation another time. But I really thoroughly enjoyed our discussion tonight, and I'm glad that you were able to come on and share about this is a great book. I'm going to look forward through the holidays, really digging into it and familiarizing myself with some of the the great memories that golf has brought, especially in your area. And I think it's going to be a great gift for that golfer out there. So go to Amazon.com, type in Scotland Home of Golf, and it'll take you right there to their landing page. And if they want to reach out to you, you mentioned earlier that you have a website in play. If they wanted to connect with you, if somebody maybe over here is interested in maybe recruiting you and Chris for a special project, what's the best way that they can go about reaching you?
Yeah, you can get hold of either Chris or myself through our website, which is ScottishGolfLibrary.com. And we have a contact page there about anything. We love getting comments, questions from different people, on different subjects, looking for a favorite course or a favorite hole. Please get in touch with us, ScottishGolfLibrary.com. And Ted, I've got to say thank you so much. You've been so generous to me. I've had a blast with you, both on our earliest conversation and also this evening. So thank you so much. I've had a great time.
Not a problem. I appreciate that. And let's make a point next time when you come on, and we'll maybe set something up sometime in the new year. I would love if he's available. If we can keep him up late enough, we'll get your son Chris to join us as well. You know, a couple of old guys here, we managed to hold the fort down for a good hour. Yes. Mine's a little bit earlier, so it was easier for me than I'm sure you. But be well, stay safe, have a wonderful holiday, and thank you very much for doing what you do. It just makes golf that much more enjoyable, and I look forward to our next time together here on Golf Talk Live.
Thank you so much, Ted. You keep safe as well.
All right. You have a great evening, and I'll be in touch soon.
Okay. Yeah. Have a happy holidays, Ted. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest from overseas, Iain Lowe, author of Scotland, Home of Golf, and also the owner of Iain Lowe Photography. He and his son Chris, of course, have teamed up and putting some great stuff together. And you can reach out to them, as he said, if you're interested in learning more. You can visit their website, scottishgolflibrary.com, and you can contact them there if maybe you are interested in working with them in some way, or maybe you have a project that you're working on that maybe they can be of service to. And so visit scottishgolflibrary.com. And if you're interested in the book, Scotland, Home of Golf, or any of the other titles, you can visit on Amazon.com. You can either type in his name, Iain Lowe, and it's I-A-I-N, not I-A-N, I-A-I-N, Lowe, L-O-W-E. And you can just put author Scotland, Home of Golf. You'll find his other titles there as well. But I want to thank everybody for joining me this evening on Golf Talk Live. We're getting close to wrapping up another interesting season here in the program. And a special thanks also to the panel earlier, Jamie Leno-Zimron and Bill Abrams. Thank you both for bringing your best to the show. As always, I hope you have a happy holiday, and I look forward to having you guys join me next year on the Coach's Corner panel. And thank you all for joining me this evening here on Golf Talk Live. It's been a pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed the program. And if you missed it for some reason, if you listen to the outgoing credits, it'll tell you some great ways that you can tune into the program and listen to the recorded version a little bit later on when it's convenient for you. But on that note, thank you, everybody. God bless, and I'll see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course, Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.